When the company executives discovered who their cleaning lady really was, the silence in that boardroom was deafening. What happened next will completely change how you see the people around you. Maria Santos had been invisible for 3 years. Every morning at 5:30, she arrived at the gleaming headquarters of Sterling Financial Group, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished marble floors. The security guard barely glanced up from his newspaper as she swiped her employee badge and headed for the service elevator. By the time the first executives arrived with their designer coffee and important phone calls, Maria had already cleaned half the building. She moved through the offices like a ghost, emptying trash bins and wiping down desks while the city slowly awakened outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The view from the 40th floor was breathtaking, but Maria rarely had time to appreciate it. She had quotas to meet, schedules to keep, and a reputation for being the most thorough cleaner Sterling Financial had ever employed. At 28, Maria had been working since she was 14. Her parents had immigrated from El Salvador with nothing but hope and determination, settling in a cramped apartment in Queens where the walls were thin and dreams felt even thinner. Her father worked construction, his hands growing more weathered with each passing year, while her mother cleaned houses for wealthy families on Long Island. Education was a luxury they couldn't afford, but they insisted Maria finish high school. The cleaning job at Sterling Financial came through a staffing agency that specialized in what they called facilities management. The pay was better than most places, and the work was steady. Maria needed steady. She had responsibilities that kept her awake at night, calculating and recalculating how to stretch each paycheck to cover rent, groceries, and her mother's medication. Her uniform was simple: navy blue polo shirt with the cleaning company's logo, matching pants, and comfortable shoes that could handle 12-hour shifts. She kept her long black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and wore minimal makeup. The goal was to blend in, to be efficient and unnoticed. In the corporate world of Sterling Financial, she succeeded perhaps too well. The executives and managers who worked in the building treated her with polite indifference at best. Most looked right through her, as if she were part of the furniture. They would continue their conversations while she cleaned around them, discussing million-dollar deals and strategic acquisitions, as if she couldn't understand English. Some would gesture impatiently when she needed to empty their wastebaskets, annoyed by the interruption to their important work. Maria didn't mind being invisible. It allowed her to observe without being observed, to learn things about people that they never intended to reveal. She watched how the junior analysts stayed late into the night, trying to impress their supervisors. She saw which executives had drinking problems, evidenced by the empty bottles hidden in their desk drawers. She knew who was having affairs, who was stealing office supplies, and who was genuinely kind to their subordinates. The kindness was rare. Most of the employees at Sterling Financial seemed to view their position in the company hierarchy as a license to treat those below them with casual cruelty. Maria had heard herself referred to as the help more times than she could count. She'd been snapped at for taking too long to clean an office, blamed for missing items that were simply misplaced, and treated like she was intellectually incapable of understanding basic human communication. Rebecca Chen was the worst of them all. As the director of human resources, Rebecca wielded her authority like a weapon, particularly against people she considered beneath her notice. She was in her early 30s, impeccably dressed, and possessed of the kind of casual arrogance that came from never having to worry about money. Her corner office was a testament to her success, decorated with awards and certificates that proclaimed her excellence in corporate leadership. Rebecca had made it clear from Maria's first week that she found the cleaning staff to be a necessary nuisance. She would schedule important meetings during cleaning times, forcing Maria to work around conference calls and presentations. She complained to the building management about the disruption caused by vacuum cleaners and complained about the smell of cleaning supplies. Most memorably, she had once asked Maria to stay late to clean up after a company party, then docked her pay for unauthorized overtime. The other executives followed Rebecca's lead, David Park from acquisitions would leave deliberately messy offices, scattering papers and leaving food containers on his desk overnight, seemingly testing how much cleanup he could create. Jennifer Walsh from marketing had a habit of scheduling conference room meetings that ran long, then acting annoyed when Maria needed to clean the room for the next booking. Thomas Rodriguez from operations once made Maria re-clean his entire office because he claimed she had moved something on his desk. But it was Rebecca who seemed to take genuine pleasure in making Maria's life difficult. She would find excuses to walk through areas while Maria was cleaning, making loud comments about standards and professionalism to whoever was within earshot. She had tried multiple times to get Maria fired, citing various minor infractions and complaints about her work quality. Only the intervention of the building's facilities manager, who knew Maria's work was exceptional, had kept her employed. Maria endured it all with quiet dignity. She needed this job, and she couldn't afford to fight back against people who held all the power. Instead, she focused on doing her work perfectly, arriving early, staying late when necessary, and maintaining the kind of professional demeanor that made her complaints impossible to justify. She was never rude, never argued back, and never gave them a legitimate reason to terminate her employment. The irony was that Maria was probably more educated than most people realized. She had completed high school with honors and had taken community college courses whenever she could afford them. She spoke 3 languages fluently and had a natural understanding of business operations that came from years of observing corporate behavior. But none of that mattered when you wore a cleaning uniform and pushed a cart full of supplies. Her personal life was something she kept completely separate from work. She lived in a small but clean apartment in Astoria, sharing the space with her younger brother who was studying to become an electrician. Her parents had moved back to El Salvador after her father's injury made construction work impossible, and Maria sent money to them every month to help with living expenses and medical bills. She had friends from her neighborhood, people who worked similar jobs and understood the challenges of making ends meet in an expensive city. They would gather on weekends to share meals and conversation, creating their own community of support and understanding. These were the people who knew Maria's real personality, her quick wit and generous spirit, her dreams of someday starting her own business. At Sterling Financial, none of that existed. She was simply the cleaning lady, a background figure whose name most people didn't know and whose life they never considered. The executive saw her uniform and made assumptions about her intelligence, her education, her worth as a human being. They treated her like she was invisible, not because she chose to be invisible, but because they chose not to see her. The building itself was a monument to wealth and success. Sterling Financial occupied 15 floors of a Manhattan skyscraper with marble lobbies, imported artwork, and technology that cost more than most people made in a year. The executive floors featured panoramic views of the city, private dining rooms, and conference facilities that could accommodate hundreds of people. It was the kind of place that made visitors feel small and employees feel important. Maria knew every inch of those 15 floors.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She knew which offices had safes behind the artwork, which conference rooms had the best acoustics, and which executives kept personal items in their desk drawers that revealed more about their character than their public personas ever would. She had access to areas that even some employees couldn't enter, and she had seen documents and heard conversations that would have been worth millions to the right competitors. But Maria wasn't interested in corporate espionage or insider trading. She was interested in getting through each day with her dignity intact and her paycheck secure. She had bigger concerns than office politics and corporate power struggles. She had a family to support, bills to pay, and a future to build one careful step at a time. The cleaning work itself was physically demanding but not complicated. Each floor had its own schedule and requirements. The executive suites needed daily attention, while the lower floors could be managed with every other day cleaning. Conference rooms required special care, especially after major meetings that often left behind expensive equipment and confidential documents. Maria had learned to be efficient without being rushed, thorough without being slow. She took pride in her work even when others dismissed it as menial labor, A clean, organized workspace could improve productivity and morale. Her attention to detail had prevented several potential problems, from water damage to security breaches. She had found and returned lost items worth thousands of dollars, and her reliability had made her indispensable to the building's operations. Yet none of this earned her respect from the people whose offices she cleaned. To them, she remained invisible, unimportant, easily replaced. They saw her uniform and her work cart and made immediate assumptions about her intelligence, her ambition, her place in the world. They never wondered about her story, her struggles, or her dreams. They never considered that the person emptying their trash might have thoughts and feelings and a life that mattered. This was the world Maria navigated every day, a world where her value was measured only by her ability to remain unseen and unheard. She had learned to accept the casual indignities and thoughtless cruelty as part of the job, the price she paid for steady employment and the chance to support her family. She told herself that other people's opinions didn't define her worth, that her real life existed outside these gleaming corporate walls. But acceptance didn't mean the treatment didn't hurt. It didn't mean she enjoyed being spoken to like she was stupid, or being treated like she was invisible, or being reminded daily that she was considered less important than the people whose messes she cleaned up. It meant she had learned to survive in a system that was designed to make people like her feel small and powerless. What Maria didn't know, as she moved through her daily routine of cleaning and organizing and remaining invisible, was that everything was about to change. The life she had built on quiet dignity and careful invisibility was about to be turned completely upside down. The people who had dismissed her as just another cleaning lady were about to discover that their assumptions about her were not just wrong, but catastrophically, embarrassingly, career-endingly wrong. The revelation, when it came, would expose not just their prejudices, but their complete failure to understand the world they thought they controlled. And Maria Santos, the invisible cleaning lady who had endured their casual cruelty with such grace, was about to become the most powerful person in the building. The quarterly board meeting was Sterling Financial's most important event of the year. Maria had been preparing for weeks, coordinating with security and catering to ensure every detail was perfect. The 42nd floor conference room needed to be immaculate, the technology tested and retested, and the catering setup flawless. This was where the company's most powerful people gathered to make decisions worth billions of dollars. Maria arrived at 4 in the morning that Tuesday, 2 hours earlier than usual. The meeting was scheduled for 9, which gave her 5 hours to complete what normally took 8. She moved through the executive floors with practiced efficiency, her cart loaded with specialized cleaning supplies for the leather conference table that cost more than most people's cars. The conference room was a masterpiece of corporate design. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan, while the custom-built table could seat 30 people comfortably. Advanced presentation technology was built into the walls, and the sound system was calibrated for perfect acoustics. Maria had cleaned this room hundreds of times, but today felt different. Today, the stakes were higher. She polished every surface until it gleamed, arranged the chairs with mathematical precision, and ensured the temperature and lighting were perfect. The catering staff would arrive at 7 to set up an elaborate breakfast spread, followed by the audio-visual technicians who would test every screen and microphone. Maria's job was to make sure the foundation was flawless. By 6:30, she had finished the conference room and moved on to the executive offices. The board members would be arriving soon, and their assistants would want everything perfect. Maria worked systematically, office by office, ensuring that every wastebasket was empty, every surface dust-free, and every detail attended to. That's when she overheard the conversation that changed everything. Rebecca Chen was in her office early, speaking loudly on the phone to someone she clearly considered an ally. Maria was cleaning the adjacent conference room, separated only by a thin wall and an open door. She tried to focus on her work, but Rebecca's voice carried easily through the space. "The new board members are going to love this. I've prepared a full presentation on operational efficiency. We're going to show them exactly how much money we can save by cutting unnecessary expenses." Maria continued wiping down the conference table, not particularly interested in corporate strategy discussions, but Rebecca's next words made her freeze. "The biggest savings will come from outsourcing facilities management.
We're paying way too much for cleaning services, especially when you consider the caliber of people we're dealing with. I mean, most of these people probably don't even have high school diplomas." Maria's jaw tightened, but she kept listening. She had heard worse. "I've already identified the biggest problem cases. There's this one cleaning woman, Maria something. She's been here for years, and she's getting paid premium rates for basic janitorial work. She barely speaks English, and I swear she's stealing supplies. I've been documenting everything, building a case." Maria's hands stilled on the table. Rebecca was talking about her, and everything she was saying was false. Maria spoke perfect English, had never stolen anything, and was paid the standard rate for her position. But she kept listening. "The best part is, when we transition to the new company, we can hire people at half the cost. These immigrants will work for anything, and they're so grateful for the opportunity that they never complain."
It's a win-win situation. The casual racism in Rebecca's voice was breathtaking, but it was the next part that truly shocked Maria. "I've already talked to David and Jennifer about it. They're completely on board. David said he's tired of having to work around cleaning schedules, and Jennifer thinks we could easily cut the facilities budget by 60%. Thomas thinks we should have done this years ago." Maria realized that the executive she cleaned for every day had been discussing her livelihood like it was a line item on a spreadsheet. They had been planning to eliminate her job while smiling and nodding when they passed her in the hallways. "The timing is perfect," Rebecca went on. "With the new gourd composition, we can present this as a forward-thinking efficiency measure. They'll see us as innovative problem solvers who aren't afraid to make tough decisions." Maria finished cleaning the conference room in silence, her mind racing. She had always known that her job was precarious, that she could be replaced at any time. But hearing the calculated cruelty in Rebecca's voice, the casual dismissal of her humanity, was something entirely different. She moved through the rest of her morning routine automatically, cleaning offices and emptying trash bins while processing what she had heard. Rebecca wasn't just planning to fire her. She was planning to use Maria as an example of everything wrong with the current system. She was going to present Maria's termination as a victory for corporate efficiency. The executives began arriving at 8:30, an hour before the meeting. Maria watched them from her position in the supply closet, noting their expensive suits and confident demeanor. These were people who made decisions that affected thousands of employees, who controlled budgets larger than some countries' GDP. And they were about to discuss eliminating her job like they were choosing a lunch menu. David Park was the first to approach Rebecca, greeting her with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested their phone conversation had continued beyond what Maria had overheard. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, adjusting his Italian silk tie. "More than ready," Rebecca replied. "I've got photographs, documentation, everything we need to make the case. By the time I'm finished, they'll wonder why we waited so long." Jennifer Walsh joined them, carrying a leather portfolio that probably cost more than Maria made in a month. "I brought the budget comparisons you requested," she said. "The numbers are even better than we thought. We're looking at significant savings across the board." Thomas Rodriguez completed their group, nodding approvingly as Rebecca outlined their strategy. "The key is presenting it as innovation, not cost-cutting. We're modernizing our operations, bringing Sterling Financial into the 21st century." Maria watched these four people, individuals she had been cleaning up for 3 years, as they discussed destroying her livelihood with the same enthusiasm they might show for planning a vacation. They spoke about her like she was a problem to be solved, an inefficiency to be eliminated. At 8:45, the board members began arriving. Maria recognized some of them from newspaper photographs and company newsletters. These were titans of industry, people whose decisions shaped markets and economies. They moved with the confident authority of individuals who had never doubted their place in the world. The last person to enter the building was someone Maria had never seen before. He was in his early 50s, impeccably dressed, but somehow different from the others. Where the other board members projected aggressive confidence, this man seemed calm, almost serene. He moved through the lobby with quiet authority, nodding politely to the security guards and elevator operators.
Maria was finishing her final preparations when she heard Rebecca's voice echoing through the executive floor. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could take our seats, we'll begin with our operational efficiency presentation." The conference room filled with the sounds of chairs being pulled out and papers being shuffled. Maria knew she should leave the area, retreat to the lower floors where she wouldn't accidentally overhear confidential business discussions. But something kept her in place, perhaps a morbid curiosity about how her professional execution would be presented. Rebecca's voice carried clearly through the partially open door. "One of our most significant opportunities for improvement lies in facilities management. Our current cleaning contractor charges premium rates for substandard service. Many of their employees lack basic education and professional skills." Maria felt her face flush with anger, but she remained silent. "For example," Rebecca continued, "we have one individual who has been here for 3 years despite multiple performance issues. She requires constant supervision, has difficulty understanding basic instructions, and represents exactly the kind of inefficiency that holds our company back." The casual cruelty was breathtaking. Maria had never received a single complaint about her work performance. She had never required supervision beyond the normal protocols. And Rebecca knew perfectly well that Maria understood instructions better than most of the executives who gave them. "I've prepared a comprehensive analysis of the cost savings we can achieve by transitioning to a more modern facilities management approach. We're looking at a potential 60% reduction in costs while improving service quality." David Park's voice joined the presentation. "The current system is simply outdated. We're paying first-world wages for third-world work quality. It's time to bring our operations into alignment with our corporate values." Maria had heard enough. She began pushing her cart toward the service elevator, wanting to escape before she heard anything worse. But as she moved past the conference room, she caught sight of something that made her stop. The man she had not recognized, the one who had seemed different from the others, was sitting at the head of the table. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his posture that suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with what he was hearing. Rebecca was now showing photographs on the large presentation screen. She couldn't see them clearly from her position, but she could guess what they showed. Rebecca had apparently been documenting her work, looking for evidence to support her case for termination.
As you can see, Rebecca was saying, the current approach lacks the professionalism and efficiency we expect from our service providers. These individuals simply don't understand the standards required in a corporate environment. That's when Maria heard Jennifer Walsh's voice adding to the presentation. "The language barrier alone creates significant communication problems. We've had multiple instances where simple instructions had to be repeated multiple times, causing delays and frustration." Maria had never had communication problems with anyone at Sterling Financial. She spoke English better than some of the executives, and she had never needed instructions repeated. But the lies continued. Thomas Rodriguez contributed his own fabrications. There have also been security concerns. When you have people who don't understand corporate protocols, you create vulnerabilities that could compromise sensitive information. Maria realized that these 4 executives had constructed an elaborate fiction about her incompetence and unreliability. They had created a narrative that justified their desire to eliminate her position while making themselves look like responsible managers protecting the company's interests. The presentation continued for another 10 minutes, with each executive adding their own embellishments to the story of Maria's supposed inadequacies. They painted a picture of a cleaning staff that was overpaid, underqualified, and potentially dangerous to the company's operations. Finally, Rebecca concluded with what she clearly considered her masterpiece. In summary, ladies and gentlemen, we have an opportunity to demonstrate real leadership by making the difficult but necessary decision to modernize our facilities management. We can save significant money while improving service quality and eliminating potential security risks. The conference room was quiet for a moment, and Maria could imagine the board members processing what they had heard. These were busy people who trusted their executives to manage operational details. They probably had no reason to question the presentation they had just witnessed. Then the man at the head of the table spoke, and his voice was different from the others. Where they had been aggressive and confident, he was calm and measured. "This is very interesting," he said. "Tell me more about this particular employee you mentioned. What's her name?" "Maria Santos," Rebecca replied immediately. "She's been the primary example of the problems we're facing with the current contractor." "And how long has she been working here?" 3 years, David Park answered. "Far too long, in my opinion." "I see. And you've documented these performance problems?" "Extensively," Rebecca said, her confidence growing. "I have photographs, incident reports, supervisor complaints. The evidence is overwhelming." The man was quiet for another moment. Then he asked a question that seemed to surprise everyone in the room. "Has anyone here ever actually spoken to Maria Santos? Beyond giving her instructions, I mean. Has anyone had a conversation with her?" The silence that followed was telling. Maria could practically hear the executives looking at each other, confused by the question. "I'm not sure I understand," Jennifer Walsh finally said. "Why would we need to have conversations with cleaning staff?" "I'm just curious about her perspective on her work performance. Has anyone asked her about these supposed problems?" Rebecca's voice carried a hint of irritation when she replied, "With respect, sir, these are operational issues that don't require input from support staff. We've made our assessment based on professional standards and business requirements." The man's next words were spoken so quietly that Maria had to strain to hear them. "Professional standards. I see." There was something in his tone that made the conference room go completely silent. Maria could sense that the dynamic had suddenly changed, though she couldn't understand why. "Rebecca," the man said, "would you please ask Maria Santos to join us?" The request was so unexpected that Rebecca actually stammered. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't think that's necessary. We have all the information we need to make an informed decision." "I'd like to speak with her," the man repeated, and there was steel in his voice now. "Please ask her to join us." Maria felt her heart racing. Whatever was happening in that conference room, she was about to become the center of attention in a way she had never experienced. She had spent 3 years being invisible, and now she was being summoned to face the most powerful people in the company. Rebecca's voice came through the intercom system a moment later. "Maria Santos to the executive conference room immediately." Maria took a deep breath, smoothed her uniform, and walked toward what she was sure would be her termination meeting. She had no idea that she was actually walking toward the moment that would change everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.